Got it. Very good. Okay, so thank you very much for staying with me all during these sessions. I'm glad some of you have told me that you are pleased with them. I'm excited to hear that. Just for the recording, I want to say that these sessions are recorded, and if any of you or you have anyone that cannot be here tonight needs to talk, send an email to Aparna for the actual link. It appears, I'm told, that this cannot be left in the YouTube like I would have done, because there are some legal ramifications I do not know, but you do. So as they say in French, sei gesund. So let me tell you that, yes, like Phil was saying, Psalm 118, which is our psalm, is a psalm that is included as part of the Hallel. Remember, we were talking about Tehillim as the hymns of praise, right? The psalms, and different from Tehilot, any time of praise. And the Hallel, the same root, right? Are a specific group of psalms. Let's remind ourselves, all the way from 115 to 118. And all the psalms are used sometimes completely and sometimes truncated, depending on the occasion. And truncated doesn't mean that we cut them. It just means that we don't recite the entire full psalm. So I'm going to begin with a recording, if I may. So the way to do it is I think by sharing the screen, and then we'll talk about it.
Adonai leolam. Hallelujah. Adonai kitab ki leolam chazda. Adonai kitab ki leolam chazda.
So this version that you just heard, a little bit of the introduction, is a version from the ghetto in Rome. Yes, you have it. This is a version, a Roman version. Those of you that were with me when we did Italian Jewish music, we did a little touch just to remind you that Italy is not all Jewish music in Italy is not the same. Not all liturgical music in Italy is the same. Italy was actually a city-state until 1870, when finally became a country. So please remember that. Therefore, different cities have different traditions. I'm not going to extend myself on that, but I thought that you will be interested in knowing that in the same way that the Ashkenazi community has different areas, right? It's not the same to talk about Kiev than to talk about Berlin or to talk about St. Petersburg, the same, or Romania for that matter. The same applies to these different places. And so Rome or Italy is not necessarily the other guys, Sephardi guys. It's actually something that stands on their own. I'm going to place, to share the screen simply for those of you that, to read the text together. It begins with the words, Hodu l'Adonai kitov ki leolam chazdo. You're definitely familiar with these words. It happened 7 times in the Tanakh, in the Bible. And they happened in 2 Psalms first, 106 and 107. And in one more, I'm going to stop the share to see if you are familiar with a psalm that is that we recite certainly every Shabbat. And see how early you come to services. That is what the key of it is. If you do not recognize it, this coming Shabbat, I want to at 9:30 sharp. No. Do you know what I'm talking about? This called the Hallel Hagadol. We were talking about the Hallel. This is a special Hallel, and it's Psalm 136, and every single of its versions ends with the words Ki leolam chazdo, because God's mercy is endless. And so I'm going to come to share the screen one more time so we can look at this. Basically, the first 4 verses of this 25 verses psalm, the first 1, 2, 3, 4 are the basic opening as an invitation of all of us to praise God. And the first line, give thanks to Adonai, for God is good, for God's compassion is everlasting. Israel declares God's steadfast love is eternal. And then the house of Aaron says the same thing. And then those who are in awe of Adonai or fear, depending on how you want to read the word Ireh from Ira, all right? And they all answer, Ki leolam chazdo, And we presume, since the Psalms were actually recited by the Leviim at the temple with a big T, that probably the way that it happened, it could be two possible ways. One of them is that the Leviim would recite Hodu l'Adonai ki tov ki le'olam chasdo, and the people would answer the same way, which is the tradition that we have when we recite Hallel. Or it could be that they would say Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, and the people would answer Ki le'olam chasdo. Yes, and the importance of this is that that people could be connected to the prayer, to the tefillah, in a very visceral way, recognizing God's chesed, right? And opening with a big with a big point of praise, of exclamation, of recognition of a reality. I always say, I'll stop the share so I can see you. I always say that it's very common for us when something doesn't go well. Yeah, we can't see it, Phil, but thank you for pointing it out. It's a little bit to your right, if you want. There you go. That's So it's very common for us when something goes wrong. What is that we say? God, why this happens to me? And in the language of the Tanakh, Lama azabtani, why did you abandon me? Yes, why did you abandon me? I want to ask you this question. When something good happens to you, do you say, God, I'm not sure I deserve it. Why is this happening to me? Big silence. So this is the first moment that I want to recognize. I hope that you stay with this idea that so many times, so nisim, we say in the morning, nisim shebechol yom, right? Translated as signs, if you want, or miracles, everyday miracles, beginning with opening our eyes and being alive. Yes. So I wanted to reflect on the fact that many times we treat God as a mechanic, meaning you only bring your car to the mechanic when it's broken. You don't go to your mechanic to say, I have to tell you, it's been 100,000 miles, this car is perfect. Think about that. I'm going to now move on to another musical setting that is going to bring us to our second statement that begins on measure 5 with the words Minametzar Karatiya. What we're gonna hear is something very truly inspiring. We're talking about a composer, Halevi, a French composer. I don't know how many of you have heard of him. So Halevi lived in France, in Paris, more specifically, during the 19th century. You may have heard of him because he composed at least one opera called La Juive, the Jewess, that became really, really popular during the late 1900s in France and the world, and then it stopped somehow during the 20th century, of course, we know during Nazism completely, but then eventually now is beginning to be performed more often. And what we're going to hear is actually a piece that is called Min HaMetzar, from verses 5 till 8, and it goes extensively. And the Chazan you're going to hear is Jacob or Yaakov Barkin, a Chazan that was born, I wanted on purpose to do this, that was born in Ukraine and went first to Canada in 1920 when he was 6 years old. Then he became Chazan of a congregation in San Francisco from 1940 to 1952. And then of Adas Israel, really where I live in Washington, D.C. He performed with the Washington National Symphony in Mexico, in Italy, in Israel. In the 1960s, he had operatic performances with the Pittsburgh and the New York Symphony Orchestras and the Metropolitan Opera, and he was decorated by the Israeli government for Israeli performances and supporting the troops. So here is Mr. Yaakov Chazan Yaakov Barkin, and this is his version of Mina Metzar Karatia. I'm gonna stop. I know you're gonna hate me for doing that, but it's the price that I have to pay because it's a long sum. And I just only want to say this. We we have lost this music at the synagogue today. This is not music that you're going to hear almost anywhere. We have lost the possibility of having choirs of this caliber as well. Perhaps some people will say you might as well, because we want to participate more fully. But I believe strongly that there is the possibility of having yes and yes, not necessarily this or that, but that there is a possibility of actually having some moments of reflection of this caliber, and especially because you probably noticed that the composer, especially somebody as attuned to Judaism as Halevi, right, knew exactly not only the meaning of the words, but the impact of the words. Mina metzar karatiya, from the depths I have called you, God. What does it mean from the depths? Not necessarily from a cave, not necessarily from an oil bunker or something, but rather from the depths of my heart, from the moment where I feel completely with lack of answers in my life, I have cried to you. You know very well, because we are in the book of Shemot, and only when the children of Israel cried to God is that God intervenes to look for the liberation from Egypt. And Mitzrayim has the same root, of course, of the word metzar, right? Narrowness, mina metzar karati ya. Normally you will translate it from the straits I have called you. I think that is better to call it in distress I have called you, God, right? And the words Adonai li lo ira ma ya'aseh li Adam. If God is with me, against, remember the relationship that we have with God, that the psalmist always brings full-fledged. The idea, Adonai li lo ira, if God is with me, I have nothing to fear. Yes, and more, Adonai li be'ozerai, God is my helper, right? And so it goes that now we have gotten from those 4 verses, when we were beginning to exclaim our thanks to God, our praise for God, then we got deeper into we began this moment of sincerity, perhaps the pandemic, perhaps a moment in our lives when we are in a down place and we say, I have called you from my depths and you have answered me. And maybe that's why I'm praising. Perhaps that is the reason why I feel that it's inevitable that I have to be thankful, because otherwise I would not be here. And we'll see that topic very, 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 and look, for instance, of the word, right? Metzar, with another word that I wanted to remind you, for those of you that are a little more familiar with the Hebrew language, the word yetzer, creation, yetzirah, creativity, the idea that when you are engaged in creativity, that there is sometimes moments of distress. You don't know exactly how you want to compose something, how you want to paint, how you want to create a sculpture. Not always everything comes in a straight line. And remember that with this psalm, because that is actually critical. Don't think, oh, I'm very happy, it's great, God is with me, blah, blah, blah. No, there are moments that I am in distress. And then what is that we were just heard? The idea that not only this is a personal issue, but it is also a national issue. Because national in the sense that as the Jewish people, we had to lead with other nations. And how can we then recognize that God is with us? In the same way, perhaps, that King David felt that without God being with him, he could not really create something of value, something standing. So I want to move a little bit farther and show you, so we can how the recognition of how God is in the national scene. It says, Ozi bezimratia vayehi li lishua. Are you with? Is that all right? Yeah. Okay. So notice one thing that might be of interest to you. Adonai becomes now a different name, Yah. Yes, Ozi bezimrat Yah, and Yah is my strength. Is Oz is the word for power. Ozi bezimrat Yah, Yah is my strength and might. Vayehi li lishua, and God has become my deliverance. Yes, as an idea that not just now, we're not talking in terms of me personally, but in terms of our people, the Jewish people. And notice the next verse, Kol rina vishua, the tents of the righteous, right, resound with joyous shouts of deliverance. Vishua, be'oalei tzadikim, in the tents of the righteous, right? And then it says, Yemin Adonai osachail, the right hand of the Adonai is triumphant. Of course, you know, I'm going to stop a little bit. Of course, you know that we are not talking in anthropomorphic terms. But what are we saying when we're saying God's right hand?
Well,
Phil.
This seems, the word chayil seems important, because chayil makes this look, and you mentioned King David, it seems like you're in the military.
So let's
Chayil,
remind everybody, the word chayal means soldier. Yes, go ahead. Okay.
So that's what, and if God watches over you as a soldier and you do the right thing, like King David, you're not going to die.
Correct. But what is this idea of a right hand? Because we have it also in, if you recall, we have it also this kind of thing in there, in the sense of in the Haggadah. Marilyn, please.
The right hand's considered the strong side, and the favored person is at your right hand.
Wow. Wow, this is interesting, and I can see that you're not left-handed. So I'll forgive you for that. No, just kidding, just kidding. But I also want to take what you're saying. Do you know what it came to me when I was rereading the Psalm? Maybe because I live in Washington, D.C., and I'm surrounded by monuments. I was thinking of Lincoln Monument. If you remember, the right hand of Lincoln, right, of the Lincoln Memorial is closed and the left hand is open. What do we learn from that? One, the right hand is power, a little bit of what Phil was telling us about the soldiers. The left hand is openness, compassion. Think about that idea of sometimes strength means power, strength, right? I want to play for you, as you can see, this idea, Ozi bezimratia, this time a melody that is a Yemenite melody. See if I have it ready for you. I think it is. Okay, is everybody all right? I heard, so I hope that everybody can hear everything. You are laughing. I just don't know if it's because that was something about this or about something else.
I loved it.
Okay, you loved it. Good, good. So this is an example of how Yemenite Jews actually chant the Hallel. But before that, I wanted to show you what some words that are critical in our understanding of this text. Of course, we talked about this idea of Yamin Adonai Romema, Yamin Adonai Osachai, the right hand, and then after that, in a very profound way, on verse 17. Lo amut ki echye ba'asaper ma'aseh Yah. I will not die, I shall not die, but live in order to proclaim the works of Yah. Meaning that this is a central element in Judaism that I want to emphasize very much. We are a way of life that puts life in front of everything, right? We say in the book of Devarim, Re'eh Anochi Natati Lifnechem, see, I put in front of you Achaim ve'amavet, Avracha ve'aklala. I have given you life and death. I have given you, right? Ubacharta b'chaim, and choose life immediately. That's what God says. Like, yes, both of them exist, but choose life. And why do I say that? I'm gonna say this. I know this is recorded. I'm going to be receiving a lot of flack for this, but I'll take it. So sometimes it saddens me that in Judaism we tend to put the accent on the sadness. When do we, I have to go to synagogue, I have to say Kaddish. I'm not denying that that's important. But what happens about celebrating? What happens about coming to rejoice with everyone else? It's important to remember, yes. But is it possible that we can turn the balance a little bit this way, to remember, but also to praise, to meditate, but also to exalt, right? So this idea that maybe we can become a little happier, right? Maybe Judaism can become, in our eyes, a moment where we can, like Shabbat, but it can be a Chag, it can be anywhere, anytime where we have the opportunity to come together to rejoice. In fact, you know it fully well, which is the Chag, the holiday by excellence, Sukkot, a Chag. And what is this also? The Chag, and what is that we are commanded? To be happy. To be happy. So I want to throw that little publicity right there to see, maybe we talked about that sometimes we only think of God when we are at the mechanic, right? When we have bad times. We also talked about this idea of many times when we are in the depth, we return, right? And hopefully we celebrate. And this idea that we can have a happier Judaism, a vital, a fervent, yes, a one that has memory, God forbid, that has memory, but not only the memory of that which is gone. So the words, Lo amut ki ahyeh, I will not die but live. Why? Why would I live? Just for the sake of it? Ah, no, immediately. Va'asaper ma'aseya, to tell, to narrate God's creation, to be an emissary, to be a messenger of that God has created. That's why. Also this idea that we will not die, but we will live, not just for the sake of it. Why do you live? Just because. No, we have a purpose in life that hopefully motivates us. So I want to take you to the next part of what happens here. I hope I'm trying to move fast enough. You look at the words on 19, Pitchuli Sha'arei Tzedek Abo Bam Odeya. Of course, the idea that after I live, after I'm not dead, but I'm living and I'm telling God works, narrate God's creation, then we say, we hope that the gates of victory or the gates of righteousness, right? Pitchuli Sha'arei Tzedek Abo Bam Odeya. Why do I want those gates to open? I want to personally come through them to thank, to praise God, right? The same idea from the beginning, right? And the same idea of Odecha ki anitani, the idea of praise is very, very central. And Ze Ashar Ladonai Tzadikim Yavou Bo. This is the gate, we think. It's just not any gate. It's a gate not only where righteous people are going to come in, but the people that have done the right thing. Yes, that's what righteous people are. People that are pursuing justice. See, as we have left Martin Luther King Day, right? It reminds us, and so many things. Pitchuli Sha'arei Tzedek, open those gates. And of course, this may happen that it reminds you of the high holidays when we say during Neilah, right? I'm going to stop the sharing. Do you remember in the service of Neilah, when the gates close, right? This phenomenal moment, incredibly climatic. What is that we ask? Pitchu lanu sha'arei tzedek, navo bam nodeya. The same thing that we just say here, but in the plural, in the communal. It's all of us, when the gates of heaven are closing, that we want to come through. And why do we want to come through? To tell God's story. That's right. And now that we gotten into this area, I'm gonna tell you that it comes in different section, right? And the section says, Ana Adonai Oshiana, Ana Adonai Atzlichana. Please God, the word Ana translated sometimes as please, and sometimes as like the word na, which means now, right? Perhaps that's where where Hasidic Jews take, we want Mashiach now, with that sense of urgency, right? So Ana Adonai Oshia na, Ana Adonai Atzlicha na. Please feel the onomatopoeia of the idea of the sound, ana na, na 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 na, right? This idea, Oshiana, Atzlichana, that we repeat, yes. And why is that we want it? Because we have gotten into that gates, Ze Hayom Asa Adonai. This is the day that God has made. What is that we have to do? Nagila v'nismecha bo. We're going to rejoice in it. Yes, and so we now become a little more, how can I say it? We feel a little more inside of ourselves, finding is the scrutiny of our soul, recognizing that maybe we haven't done everything we need to do. Ana Adonai Oshiana, Ana Adonai Atzlichana. Please God, save us. Please God, make us succeed. And as you are in here, I'm going to stop the share because I don't believe that you can do this all together. And I'm going to take you to the internet for this version of the words Baruch Haba. You'll see in a minute what do I mean by that. So just a second. YouTube. Baruch Haba. Take you to London, to the Spanish synagogue. Can you see or not yet? You can't see a thing. All right, that's good that you tell me. Let's see if now you can. So great. So those are the last 4 verses of this psalm. Let me just go to them and look at what we mean. Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. May the person who enters be blessed in Adonai's name. Berachnuchem mibeit Adonai. We bless you from Adonai's home. El Adonai va'yair lanu. Adonai has given us light, and its relation to this, to Ad Karnot HaMizbeach, the idea of the sacrifices at the temple, and then Eliata ve'odeka, you are my God, in a very, very sort of buber, you and I, thou and I, you are my God, and I will praise you. Elohai, you are my God. Aromemeka, I will extol you. Odu l'Adonai ki tov ki leolam chasdo. If you remember, that's how the whole psalm begins. And I wanted to say that when we say Baruch haba, as I say when I invite you to my home, and I hope that I can say it personally to each one of you coming to my home in Silver Spring, so I can treat you with the words Baruch haba, says, which is a shorten of this verse. Blessed are you who are coming from God's house. And when so may we have the capacity to be blessed from God, and may we have the capacity to bless each other, as we sometimes do with Birkat Kohanim, with the priestly blessing. The idea that energy, that blessing that comes from God spreads throughout, creating sort of like in the same way that I was talking about mitzvah last time, and that the mitzvah goreret mitzvah, the mitzvah creates sort of in a nuclear reaction, it creates more mitzvot around. May blessing also do that. Would we have the potential to bless each other with our actions, with our thoughts, with our love, with our inclination for doing good? I'm going to stop right now. I know, I'm sorry, I tried to go as fast as I could, but it's a very long and very juicy psalm. We have a couple more minutes. In fact, since I'm organizing this, maybe a little more. I want to hear your impressions. Daka Dumia, you seem to be in silence, in the silence of praise, in the silence of admiration. I hope that that's how you feel.
If I don't remember anything else that was said tonight, I will remember that we need to say, yes, this is good, not woe is me, why didn't I? It's so much a part of what we should be thinking, and we forget. So thank you.
Amen.
Positive.
Anybody else? Any other thoughts that you want to?
Thank you for sharing the diversity of music for this,
Oh, yeah.
this song. I had no idea, so thank you.
And I had to cut a lot of them. I promise you, when I was preparing this class, I said, should I do the Iraqi version or the Yemenite version? Should I use the Spanish, Portuguese, or the French? Should I use the one from London or Amsterdam? It's like, the richness is so enormous. It's a pleasure and an honor for me to be able to bring all this to you, this musical package. So you know that we are in a global community, right? So Phil, did you want to say something, or did you just raise your hand?
Yeah, where we just ended, apart from the military part that was earlier, where we concluded today, Adonai is God who has given us light, a positive approach, given us light, and then he makes reference to the temple and to the myrtle and what went on the ark, and how they had to make a special animal go to the ark, that we don't have to be in the military. We have to do certain things to make us feel good. And that goes to ancient times, from the days of the temple, what the priests did under those circumstances. I mean, that's a very different approach.
And Phil, I want to take your words and I want to ask everybody, and promise I will conclude. I want to say, in the same way that for the temple, remember, we call them sacrifices, but they are not really the word sacrifice sounds like something that you do unwittingly. I prefer to call them offerings. And the offerings that were given at the temple were to show, for instance, Zevach Todah, the sacrifice to thank, the thankful sacrifice, or others, or the Bikurim, when we have the first fruits. The idea that not only we say it with our words, with our mouth, but with our actions as well. So prayer is powerful, and it's even more powerful, like Heschel says, when we can actually bring it into fruition in action. Yes. With that, I'm going to conclude. I want to invite you to come back next Tuesday if you still have strength, strength, and join me for another spectacular psalm, Psalm 121, right? When Esa Einai El Yarim, I will lift my eyes to the hills, to the mountains. Me'ayin Yabo Ezri. Where is my strength come from? We'll figure it out together. So I'm going to leave you with Debbie's, and I'm going to go to my next session. So thank you very much, everybody. Be well. Lots of
Thank you. Chazak
Thank you.
Baruch.
Chazak
Yeah.
ve'atzlav. Be well. Bye bye.
A Grayson Dank.